Will the quantum of uptake be sufficient to address South Africa's energy shortfalls? I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is that this has not come with a raft of supporting reforms.
In response to stage 4 load shedding, yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a raft of changes to energy policy in South Africa. Are these changes significant, and does it signify a turnaround in terms of the country's energy crisis? Well, joining me to discuss is Frans Cronje, Director of the Centre for Risk Analysis. Frans, what is your read of the President's remarks yesterday?
David, it's a good thing, but don't get too excited. What's happened is the limit, the cap on self-generation has been lifted from 1 megawatt to 100 megawatts. Now that's important because we've told our clients, we've said on these shows before, that Eskom alone cannot meet South Africa's future energy demands, and that we in fact think that by the end of this decade, if South Africa aspires to grow at emerging market average rates, the private sector would need to be producing a quantum of energy that rivals that of Eskom. Now, the energy minister had been staunchly opposed to this kind of private generation. He saw it as a security threat, that the private sector would have a chokehold over the economy. Now, Mr. Ramaphosa has therefore very clearly overrode him, and that is a significant thing. But we're going to say in our note on Monday morning on this, don't get too excited yet. It is significant, but I don't think it's the solution to our energy crises.
So, Frans, what is the cause of your skepticism here? Why are you being so cautious in your recommendations around this policy change?
Well, it is in a sense a new direction. It is opening things to the private sector. So it's less skepticism than hesitancy that we have. And the hesitancy comes from a number of sources, and I must try and remember them all. The first is this. It is to an extent a balance of forces moves this. Advice that this needs to be done can be tracked back to 2007. And very good numbers have been presented to the government ever since. And it takes a crisis, such as the stage 4 load shedding we're presently in. And that crisis did trigger a ripple of doubt, a greater ripple of doubt than I've seen in a long time, about the reform agenda of the Ramaphosa administration. It was with back to the wall that this concession is made. Second reason to be skeptical about it is, what will the extent of the uptake actually be? Will the quantum of uptake be sufficient to address South Africa's energy shortfalls? I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is that this has not come with a raft of supporting reforms, unless at the same time the government is willing to embrace the labor market reform, the empowerment policy reform, to scrap expropriation without compensation threats, to deal effectively with governance. You're going to see some important but limited examples of uptake of this new offer, and I don't think it's therefore going to reach the depth and breadth that you would want to see.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
Thirdly, I think it's a question of spreading the culpability, that if the uptake is not great, in future the government can dodge culpability for the energy crisis by saying we did present the opportunity to the private sector and they did not take it. And therefore, the solutions to South Africa's crises do not have to be private sector solutions, but can be further centralization. But going back to my second point, the only reason why that would have happened is that the broader policy environment remained very hostile. Next risk and thing to watch is that SA Inc., and particularly our country's bonds, are very vulnerable to the ESG tide sweeping through large financial institutions, which basically guidelines that say you should not be purchasing assets from companies or from countries that rely on dirty power. And even if these new power plants go ahead in substantial number, what they are going to supply is the private sector, and South Africa Inc. will remain as dependent on coal as it has ever been. And that's going to be bad for our bonds in the long term. So we don't escape the ESG risk. Next problem to watch is that if there is substantial uptake of this offer, it's going to be by Eskom's paying clients who are going to build their own power plants and become self-sufficient. What that means is Eskom loses the revenue, and it's left still with the responsibility to service the non-paying clients, and that's not great for Eskom. So David, there are a number of problems here. Further one, I'm going to add one more for you, is that the idea that a renewable power can be fed back into the grid at off-peak times doesn't actually solve South Africa's macro energy crisis at all. And last one, then I'll stop for you. Last one is the government still insists on a cap on private production. And the devil here ultimately is also going to be in the details. What will the regulatory requirements and hoops be that potential independent power producers need to leap through in order to have their licenses granted? So it's a good move. It's a significant move. It's a concession that the South African state is in and of itself unable to solve the problem. And that's to be welcomed. And it's very significant. The overriding of a minister also. But I don't think, without a raft of supporting reforms, that what's been done this afternoon is going to be sufficient. Yesterday afternoon is going to be sufficient to solve South Africa's energy crisis.
Thanks very much, Frans. We will be including more analysis on these policy changes in this week's Risk Alert. That's every Monday morning at 7 a.m. If you would like to receive these alerts, please click on the link in the description below to our 30-day free trial, and we'll add you to our distribution list. My name is David Ansara. This is the Center for Risk Analysis. Until next time, take care.